Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, a place where you can come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker, and welcome to episode 124. Here come the holidays, personal growth, and your family. Last month, if you hung out with us, you know that we were all about the possibilities of changing. And for some of you, you're already feeling some of the wonderful benefits of doing the work. So good for you. Well, this month, because of where we are on the calendar, I thought we'd focus on the upcoming holiday season and how at times it can bring us face to face with some great relationships where we can practice new behaviors and not so great situations as well, where we definitely need to practice new behaviors. So hang out with us all of November and we will dive deeper into all of this. Today, I just want to do a bit of an overview and an assessment, just to kind of get your head in the game in terms of how prepared are you for the holidays. So one of the things that we want to focus on first is probably the most obvious. What might you run into, even in conversations about maybe seeing family members, maybe even in just contemplating how you may miss your family and may not be able to see them, or you feel obligated to hang with family and maybe you don't want to. But one of the things we want to be prepared for is what you might run into, even in having the discussion about Thanksgiving or Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever you celebrate. Now, these behaviors, I think, these expectations were always there. But I think some may feel like they've been intensified, either because you see it more clearly for the first time, or it just seems more egregious to you now that you know better and do better and maybe hang out with some healthier folks in your day-to-day life. Some of the typical ones we're going to talk about this month are the passive-aggressive behaviors, the emotional dishonesty, the manipulation, emotional reactivity, rigidity in the family. Like some families have a really hard time with the idea that maybe someone doesn't want to come home for Christmas, let's say. So then there's some acting out and usually some guilt and manipulation around that. And there's so much more that we're going to get into and prepare ourselves for. I mean, some of you might be well educated in the dysfunction of your family, perhaps, but some of you may not. You know, a lot of times we start out in a form of denial where we know it's upsetting, we know our stomach's in knots, we know we get anxious, we know we get angry, we know we pull away, but sometimes we don't know why. Like, why does it make sense that we feel that way? That there are valid reasons why it doesn't feel incredibly safe. Maybe there aren't great boundaries. There isn't healthy negotiating. People don't feel like they're in a place of choice. They feel like they're in guilt or fear or both. There's other behaviors that may not be directed towards you, but still difficult to go home and deal with, like someone's depression, someone's OCD and anxiety. Worse are their addictive behaviors that are not being treated. So someone in active addiction that isn't in recovery can be a whole lot of fun at the holidays, especially with the mix of a lot of people drink at the holidays and then family stress can trigger anyone, much less an addict who isn't being treated. There are abusive behaviors. There's verbal abuse and physical abuse. So a lot of things that one can possibly run into when they're connected with family, which is oftentimes why a lot of people don't want to connect with family, or they do, and they feel obligated, and then they spend the next 3 months trying to heal from what happened. So that's what we're going to talk about. This month, we're also going to talk about what you might see oh so much more clearly as you've been doing this work here, when you go back home for the first time, some things become much more apparent than they had in the past. I mean, getting a front row seat again as to why you struggled today. As you look at their behavior and the dynamics of your relationships with them, you can really look at some of the origins of your symptoms, perhaps. What behavior was modeled for you, your coping skills, your belief systems. Your current relationships with yourself and others come from there. Those people provided our first classroom. You're going to look into also what you understand about them and their background and what they're actually capable of. We often talk on the show that, people can love you a lot, but perhaps they can't be healthier with you right now because they haven't done the work yet. Maybe they don't want to do the work. Maybe they'll never want to do the work. So going back and looking at the behaviors, a lot of clients tell me that the hardest part was the good parent, right? Or the good sister that they always got along with. And they did the black and white comparison back in the day where, maybe my sister was the only good one in the family, perhaps. Maybe she listened to you and she was kind and caring. However, when you go back home now, you also might start to see some of her behaviors that aren't so fabulous. So that's harder. That's harder to swallow and harder to deal with. But you can't help but see it when you've been working on yourself. This is not to judge, of course. This is just to observe and to understand and also have compassion. This month, we're going to talk about how to deal when you go home, how to take care of yourself, setting loving limits, setting boundaries. We're going to talk about ways you can take care of yourself with family in ways that are kind yet healthy, where you feel like you're in a place of choice, you're keeping them in a place of choice, you're picking your battles, for sure, but you're taking responsibility of taking care of you. So that's going to be a really good episode where we're going to get into some boundary work around the holidays. All through this month, you're going to be focusing on grief work. You hear me talk about that often because it's important. How to grieve, how to grow, and when we grow, we outgrow. As you get more in touch with what you think, and what you feel, and what you need, and you validate those things for yourself, you start hanging out with people who validate that for you as well. As you practice better boundaries and self-care, you will raise the bar and you're going to need better. You're going to want better. And you're going to want to be better. Therefore, you're going to grow and you're going to outgrow folks in your life that are not growing as well because they're going to be in a different headspace. If you have a loving, passive-aggressive family and you start setting boundaries, that's a whole different language, a whole different paradigm. You're going to be seen as uncaring, selfish, rude, all those lovely things. And they're not going to be able to relate to you, and you're not going to be able to relate to them. It's going to frustrate the hell out of you that your brother can't say no to his wife. It's going to frustrate you that they can't hear your no around having everyone over for Thanksgiving because you're in the middle of a remodel. Because no means rejection and no means you don't love them. So you end up just really looking at life very differently than those you may have left behind. And that's really hard. It's hard to go back home and figure out how are you going to relate then. So grief work is really important so that we can detach first with compassion and work on what we need to grieve. So we're going to spend an episode on that. We're grieving what we wish was, if that helps. When you go back different. When you do the work, you change. But oftentimes we don't really see that change immediately. And actually, one of the lovely upsides of seeing how far you've come, because you may not see it in the day-to-day because you're in it, is to be around people that you used to be around. Then you're really going to see some contrast. Sadly, right, on one hand, between how you used to behave and how you behave today, or you're working on behaving better today. You may have just started this work and you're still in process. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is the other phenomenon that we're going to explore this month is, why is it when you go home that you feel like a kid again with your parents, perhaps? We're going to talk about that. Now, the short answer is, these are old coping mechanisms, these old immature ways of protecting yourself, right? Defense mechanisms are all about defending yourself from something unhealthy, defending yourself from being vulnerable, right? Well, those are going to be pulled up because your brain is operating from the limbic system saying, uh-oh, looks like a duck. Guess it's a duck. And so no matter how hard you've been working, your initial response may be an old one. The other aspect is, in families who have a hard time letting people be individuals, they also have a hard time letting their adult kids be adults. So they may treat them in ways that do not respect their adulthood, like your boundaries, your choices. There may be some intrusiveness, like, well, what did you make that decision for? Why did you leave that job? Why do you want a different house? That kind of thing. So we're going to explore a little bit about that because that can be a tough one. If it does happen to you this holiday season, don't worry about it. Just keep working on yourself. You'll get healthier and healthier to where the new healthier behaviors will become more normal and will be your go-to response when dysfunctional behavior shows up. Remember, you can't change them. You can only change how you respond to things, to situations, to comments, to lack of comments, to whatever behavior du jour is going on across the dinner table. Remember, that's about them. And we want to focus this month on loving detachment and staying in our own lane. Okay, so what I thought we would do is do an assessment to try to understand where you are, what's going on, what are you aware of, what are you working on, and what are you prepared to do this holiday season to take care of yourself. So you can be anywhere on that continuum. You could be just getting started. You could be in the thick of the work, or you could be rounding the corner and feeling a lot better. You may have already done some of this work with your family. To that I say, there's always more. There's always healthier behaviors that we can employ this year, even if we did great last year. There's always one better. If you're in a space where you can sit and close your eyes and kind of think for a minute or jot down some notes, that's great. But if not, just listen to whatever comes up in your heart and think about it. This will be a download that you can grab from the newsletter this week, so not a problem. All right, you ready? Number 1, if you got honest, what are your secret wishes for your holiday connections? Think about that for a moment. What are your secret wishes for your holiday connections? Number 2, what do you know you need to let go of because it never worked out in the past when you got together with them or even talked about getting together with them? What do you want to work on letting go of? Not that that need isn't valid. It's just that they can't meet it, and that's a very important distinction. Number 3, how good are you at practicing loving detachment? It means you care, but that's about them. Those are their thoughts, their choices, their behaviors, their beliefs, their actions towards you. But there's nothing you can do about that. You have your own feelings about their choices and their behaviors and their actions towards you, but those are yours. And you separate them out, two different piles. Detachment takes mindfulness, commitment, and practice. Number 4, holidays can bring up losses of all sorts, including loved ones we may have said goodbye to recently. Where are you with this? If so, I'm so sorry. This is a rough time of year, I'm sure. How is your grief support if you need that? And how will you be kind to yourself this year? How do you get away from the shoulds and the have-tos and take care of yourself in terms of what you're able to handle and what you just can't deal with? Try to be nice to yourself. The first set of holidays and celebrations are always the hardest. I tell clients, just be nice to you. You're not going to want to do much probably, and that's okay. Number 5, what if you don't have any family due to death or estrangement? What is your plan for connection and self-care? Do you have good friends, maybe extended family you go hang with, neighbors? Whatever you can do, what is your plan to create your own little family that you choose? Some people go volunteer to be connected and to give and receive. Number 6, what do you want your partner or children, if you have them, to experience this season? What do you want it not to feel like for them and why? Number 7, what are your old behaviors that you see get magically triggered, like we talked about, when you're around family? How do you regress, perhaps, to old ways of coping? Number 8, what are some tools you might already be using with loved ones who aren't so healthy, even if you just have one? Try to grab one before the season starts. Number 1, to have healthier connections with them. Number 2, to preserve your sanity. At least you feel like you have some healthy power here that you get to choose, maybe to detach or set a boundary or not argue or ask for what you need, whatever it is. And number 9, how much support do you have to do all this work we're talking about? Do you have a therapist or a coach? Do you have a support group? If you don't, at least join our free Facebook group. There's a place you can connect and share and feel safe. Okay, so what came up for you as you answered those questions in your mind? Hopefully, It helped you to simply raise your awareness, not your anxiety, as you prep for the holidays. Know that even doing a little bit of preparation can really help things go better than they would have normally. Also know that we have zero control over someone else's crazy. And that's why you need to have a self-care plan in case. A place to go, a room where you can go close the door, a hotel room, even better. A way out if you want to leave early, things like that. So, two things, reminding ourselves that we're not here to change people, we're only here to take care of ourselves. All right, so today we started the month off with an overview of sorts of how to manage expectations, normalize feelings and behaviors, and make better choices, I think, for the upcoming holiday season, with all of its requisite wishes and expectations for everyone. We did an assessment of where you might be this year and some things to think about and work through as you either approach family gatherings or mourn the loss of even having that and anywhere in between. Thank you so much for joining me today. May you stay healthy and grounded and detached. Hold on to hope and find some good in someone else this week. Be sure to check the show notes at ownitpowercast.com. If you already don't get the newsletter, if you want that bonus download, there's a PDF there if you'd like to take a look at it. Thank you so much for sharing the podcast. I know a lot of you are really putting it out there and raving about it, and I love that because the more people this can help, the better. All right, so pay it forward, keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you can begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.